Your RV batteries are one of those things that you just want them to work when you go to use them. You want them to have enough power in them to do what you're hoping to do. So today we're going to be talking about your RV batteries and what you need to know. How's it going? Welcome to another All About RVs. I'm Jared Gillis, and if you couldn't tell by our name, we really do love RVing, and it's our hope to be able to share information and help other people out so that they can enjoy RVing also. So today we're going to be talking about RV batteries, the house batteries in your RV, because we rely on our RVs to do so much, and the batteries are no exception to that rule. I mean, we rely on our batteries for simple things like our awning is manual. I have to put it in and out, but so many awnings nowadays are electrical, and we rely on them for the jacks on our RV, for the slides to operate, lights, the water pump when you're off grid, the fridge when it's on propane uses a little bit of 12 volt, and for our water heater to ignite, and our furnace when we're using that off grid. So there's a lot of things we use our batteries for, and what are our options for batteries, and what do we need to do to take care of them properly? So there's four options. There's lots of different brands, but there's four options for your battery in your rig. You have your 12 volt battery that you can, it's like a deep cycle 12 volt battery. You can even pick these up at Walmart if you want to step it up from there. You can go with a 6 volt golf cart battery. If you want to step it up from there, there's AGM batteries. And then if you want to step it up from there, there's lithium batteries out there. So let's talk about some of these differences, some of the pros and cons, and the maintenance that goes along with each of those types of batteries. First off, let's look at the amp hour ratings on these batteries so that we can look at them fairly across the board. Now, this is an easy concept to understand when you think about like a car, your miles per gallon. If you're just mashing on that gas pedal and you're just flooring it every chance you get, you pull up to a stoplight and you just floor it when it turns green, and you're just going as fast as you possibly can compared to maybe somebody that drives a little more conservatively and isn't just mashing on the gas every chance they get. It's easy to see the person that's mashing on the pedal is going to get way less miles per gallon than somebody that's driving real conservatively, driving just like a real even, let's say like 45 miles an hour on the highway. They're going to get much better gas mileage. Well, it's the same way in batteries. If you try and draw a lot out of your batteries at once, you're not going to get as many amp hours out of your battery. So the majority of the time, they try and put these batteries at a 20-hour rate. So that means that they're going to take the battery from full, and in 20 hours, they're going to drain it. And how many amp hours did they get out of that? So if you had a 100 amp hour battery, they drew 5 amps for 20 hours, and they got 100 amps out of that battery. That's going to help us compare these batteries side by side. Now, the other thing is they always talk about the depth of discharge. So your depth of discharge is if you're at 100% and you bring it down to 50%, and then you go back up to 100, and that's what they recommend. That is the depth of discharge for that battery. Another thing is, that your RV is typically on a 12 volt system, but I also mentioned 6 volt golf cart batteries. So if you don't already know this, you can wire those. You'd have to buy a pair of 6 volt golf cart batteries. But if you wire them in series, you then get basically a 12 volt battery bank. So here's a quick rundown of the difference between parallel and series. So if you had two 12 volt batteries and you were going to wire them together to be one battery bank, you're going to tie the positive to the positive, and then on the other side, you're going to tie the negative to the negative, and then you're going to connect your loads and charger on each of those batteries. Essentially what you have done is you created a battery bank. So because you tied those together in parallel, it's going to remain a 12 volt battery bank, but then you add those amp hours together. So let's just say that each of those was 100 amp hours. You now have a 200 amp hour battery bank. Now, if we were to look at how we wire in series the 6 volt golf cart batteries to get them to 12 volts, we're going to wire them, like I said, in series. We're going to take the positive of one battery and tie it to the negative of the other battery, and then our load and our charger are then going to connect to those open positive and negative loads. So you've basically built just a big 12-volt battery. So when you wire it in series, you add the voltage together, so the 6 plus the 6 gives you the 12 volts, so it'll work in your RV, and you don't add together the amp hours. So if these batteries were 235 amp hours each, it's still going to be a 235 amp hour bank. Now that we understand some of that stuff, we can talk about how to compare some of these batteries. Let's just start off with that 12-volt battery that you can go and pick up at Walmart and put in your RV. So I think the pros to that type of a battery is it's easy to get and it's relatively inexpensive. You can get like a 75 amp hour battery for about $75. So these batteries are a bit of a hybrid. They're decent at starting things and they're decent at deep cycle. And sometimes it's even hard to find that amp hour rating on the side because they're more of a hybrid type of a battery. But if you buy a couple of the larger ones, you can get close to a 100 amp hour battery. And if you buy two of them, then you have a 200 amp hour battery bank. Now, the depth of discharge on these batteries is 50%. You don't want to bring these batteries past that 50% before you charge them back up, because if you do, you begin the process of sulfation and damaging the battery. And that's one of the leading causes for killing your battery, is having that sulfation when you draw it past that 50%. So in a nutshell, if you ended up buying two of them and you had a 200 amp hour battery bank, you only really get to use 100 amp hours out of that battery bank. Now, with this battery also, we have some maintenance that goes along with them. This is a lead acid battery. They vent out of the top. So if you have a container, typically your RV is going to have like a storage bin up front that's already vented, or usually a bay that's dedicated for batteries. It's already going to be vented. So you don't really have to put too much thought into this. Just make sure you keep it in its position to be vented. But with that, it's going to be off-gassing, and with that, it loses some of its fluid inside. So then you have to check it ever so often and put that water level at the proper level. Because if you let it get too low, then you're just going to be killing your battery again and then replacing it long before you would ever want to. Now, let's say you wanted to step it up and get some golf cart batteries. So you're gonna have to buy those in pairs, and they usually come around 215 amp hours, 235 amp hours. I mean, the more amp hours you get, usually the taller they get. So one of the drawbacks to these batteries, if your battery storage compartment can't handle a taller battery, these typically are taller, but if you can handle a taller battery, it's not a big deal at all. Now, this battery is great at handling that deep discharge and cycle that our RVs usually go through, but you still want to remember, don't take it past that 50%. It's the same as that 12-volt battery, because if you take it below that point, you're going to do damage to your battery. So take it to the 50% and then charge it back up. So it's similar there, similar maintenance. You want to ensure that that water level is going to be at the same, the proper level that it needs to be at. If you let it dry out, you're just going to destroy that battery. So those two things are the same. You're usually going to get more amp hours, more power out of a battery like this. This is what they're designed to do, so they do it well. Now, cost-wise, depending on if you're going for a certain brand or not, they can be considerably more expensive than that 12-volt battery. But there are some deals to be had out there. There's lots of options in the golf cart battery. So I know that we can pick one up for like $120 for 100. I gave the wrong information when I said it there. It was $125 for a 235 amp hour battery. So that's a pretty good deal. One last thing that I almost forgot to mention with this battery is, like the first one, we also have to vent this battery. This battery needs to be vented to make sure that you don't build up any of those toxic, corrosive types of fumes. Now, the next step up from here are the AGM batteries. Now, let me show you a couple. Our neighbor's rig has some AGM batteries. Here's his battery compartment. It's got a nice rig. These are the AGMs, and they're sealed. There's nothing you can do to add water to them. There's no maintenance, and that's one of the things that people love about these AGM batteries. So I would say first on the list of advantages is you don't have to do any more maintenance. This absorbed glass mat battery, they're sealed, no more maintenance, no more checking water levels. And because you don't have that water in there sloshing around, you can actually mount these in other positions if you needed to do that for your battery bank. Another great thing about these batteries is they store better than the other two that we had talked about. I should have mentioned it in that, but when you put those other two, the 12 volt and the 6 volt golf cart battery in storage, they're going to discharge just naturally. They're just going to lose some of their energy. And then you have to check that because you don't want them going too low, obviously. But these AGM batteries, they store better. They don't lose as much as you store them, as they just kind of sit there on the shelf. So that is a good thing too. And when you're ready to start charging them up, they charge much faster than the other two. So if you need to charge up your batteries quickly, which is always a good thing, they charge faster. Now you will need to get a converter charger to match this AGM style of battery because they take a different charge cycle than the other two, but they charge much quicker. Now, you might be looking at this list and thinking, that's all advantages. Where are the cons to this battery? Well, the cost pretty much doubles from those 6 volt golf cart batteries, depending on the brand you get. I'll put a link in the description, but there's some on Amazon that you can get for around $250 a piece, something like that. So it starts stepping up there in price, but there's a lot of advantage that come with it. Now let's move along to our last battery, which is the lithium, and it's what we ended up going with. We ended up choosing the Battle-Born lithium battery. It's a 100 amp hour battery, and we have 2 of them. Now with this battery, there's still pros and cons, but this battery is capable of some pretty amazing things. They are extremely efficient. If you were to forget about the 20-hour rate for the amp hour and you were to do it on a 4-hour rate, this battery is still supposed to be 99% efficient. So that is pretty amazing. Number 2, these batteries are lighter than the 6 volt golf cart batteries that we had before. Now those were close to like 65 pounds, something like that. These Battle-Born batteries, they are 29 pounds each, and they are about the same size as your typical, just your normal battery. So if you're just gonna drop them into the same place that you had your batteries previously, they'll usually fit in that same place, which is kind of handy. And the size was kind of important to us because of where we're going to be putting them. Well, let me show you where we're going to put our batteries now. We typically have this area right here that holds 2 batteries, but now we're going to put them down here in this basement area. We have this weird little nook in between the wall back there and the water tank, because our water tank's here in this basement, and we really couldn't store anything. It was always awkward. Nothing really fit in there. But these batteries, I can stack them and put them on their side back in here. I talked to Battle-Born. They said this configuration's more than fine for their batteries. But I'm able to utilize that space now and actually gain just a little bit of storage. So for me, this works out pretty well. I don't mind putting them in that position because they require 0 maintenance. There's nothing that I have to do, no water level or anything, no venting needed at all also. So it works great in that spot. This bay works really good for where we're putting our batteries because it protects them from getting too hot and too cold. You don't want these batteries getting too far on either extreme. It's not good for them. Now, talking about temperature, this is something that I learned this week, that if you let those other lead acid batteries discharge and then they freeze, you're destroying your battery also. So if you're putting your RV in storage, make sure that battery's charged, because I guess a charged battery isn't going to freeze like a discharged battery would. Now, I saved one advantage to couple along with the disadvantage. So I know a lot of people are going to say, man, those batteries are so much more expensive. And they are. It's $1,000 compared to the prices of the other batteries. But what you get along with that is the life of the battery, so the cycles that it can handle. The lead acid and the AGM, those are typically going to last you for about 1,000 cycles. This lithium battery is going to last you for 3,000 cycles. And once you hit that 3,000 cycle point, it goes to usually around like a 75 to an 80% capacity that you still have in that battery. So you still have 80% of that battery going forward. So the life expectancy, if you were to do the math on all of it, it pencils out if you're planning on using them a lot. And especially for us, when we live in our rig full time, it works out really well. Now, another advantage these batteries have is they charge 4 times faster than your lead acid batteries. Now, the last kicker with these batteries is the amp hour capacity. Now, you look at it and it's just 100 amp hours, but we are no longer restricted by that 50% depth of discharge. I can take these down 100%. I can take a full 100 amp hours out of these batteries. So with the two of them, I get a full 200 amp hours out of these batteries. If I wanted to do that in an equivalent AGM battery, I'd have to be looking at probably 4 AGM batteries for the footprint of these, and we just don't have the space for that. So for us, these worked out great. Now that's basically the rundown of all these batteries, and I don't think that there's a one size fits all. For instance, if you're somebody that goes from RV park to RV park and you're almost always plugged in, then maybe that 12-volt battery you can pick up at Walmart would work well for you, because you're not really looking for a huge capacity to be off grid. But let's say you love getting out there and staying out there just as long as you can, and that's your ultimate goal, then lithium might be the best option for you. Now, let me leave you with a few things that you want to keep in mind. Now, I'm going to put a link in the description to some of these things, but I think a good battery monitor is always great to know how much you're putting in, how much you're taking out. So there's a link to that. I think you should get away from a single stage converter if that's what your RV has. It's really bad for your batteries. It's not efficient at charging them. It'll boil them if you leave it plugged in too long, and then you'll kill your battery that way too. So a good multi-stage converter is great. We'll do a whole video on that. You don't want to mix and match these different battery types in your battery bank. You want to get the same battery basically in the same lot, because they have different resistances and whatnot. So you want to have similar batteries bought at the same time, same age, and all that. Now, those are some of the best things you can do to keep your battery to last is check the maintenance if your battery requires maintenance, and watch how deep you discharge those batteries for the AGM and the lead acid. So doing those things is really going to take care of your batteries. Don't let them die, and they'll serve you a decent amount of time, a good long time. So if you like this video and if it helped you out, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. And if we don't see you on the road, hopefully we'll see you in the next video. So get out there and have some fun.